Are you out in the woods right now?
I wouldn't really say the woods. I'm on the edge of the woods in the gazebo.
So you're sitting in a gazebo, but you're too manly to wear pink glittery headphones.
Gazebos are very manly. If you didn't know, I mean, you just need to get on like Ask Men and
Yeah,
see like
I need to. I can watch like The Notebook or something if I want to find out how manly a gazebo is.
Well, apparently you haven't seen my gazebo.
Whenever I think of manliness, a gazebo doesn't pop to mind suddenly. I'm sorry. Maybe a garage or a basement, but a gazebo.
I don't have any sons, but like if you do have a son, and you know if you think he's kind of acting like a wuss, and it's like, okay, what can I do to like pump this guy up and increase his testosterone levels? We're going to talk about guns, trucks, and gazebos.
That's the rite of passage where you're at? Guns, trucks, and gazebos?
Yeah.
Well, let's take our rite of passage right now. Welcome to Bigfoot Crossroads Radio, our test run episode. I'm Matt Knapp. I'm joined here with Johnathan Brown, my co-host.
Hey guys.
Hey. We don't wear girly headphones.
You were asking too much. I can't believe you even thought that was a possibility.
You're hanging in a gazebo. It's okay to wear pink headphones. Nobody would know.
For one, you don't know anything about this gazebo. And two, you don't know which headphones it is that I'm talking about.
You could be wearing the pink headphones right now.
Well, at first I knew that Chloe had some purple skull candy earbuds, and I was like, okay, that'll be fine. And she couldn't find those, and she's like, you can wear these, Dad. And they're these Rainbow Dash, like sparkly, like big headphones. It's like, no, even though I'm the only person in the world that is going to know that I'm going to have those on, if let's suppose that I died out here, I'm not going to be found wearing Rainbow Dash headphones.
Yeah, there would be some major controversy about that one. Found dead in a gazebo wearing Rainbow Dash headphones.
Yeah, if that happened, there's going to be a lot of other questions about me, like...
Just make sure you didn't have, like, the cord wrapped around your neck at the time.
Yeah. If something were to happen to me and I had those headphones on, people would have all kinds of questions, like, okay, that's really weird that he was found dead with Rainbow Dash headphones on, so I don't even know if I ever knew him.
In a gazebo.
Matt, the gazebo is an experience. You just need to understand. You need to, like, even though you think you're too manly to have a gazebo, just get one. Or go to somebody's place and just go into a gazebo and just, you know...
I've been to somebody's house who had a gazebo.
Well, if you remembered correctly when you were in that gazebo, what probably happened was you stood a little bit straighter, your shoulders went back a little further, your head was a little more up, you felt like you had spurs on.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about either of our sexualities. We're here to talk about Bigfoot. And I thought, as a good way to kind of introduce things, I would let you kind of tell your story. I'm not sure if very many people, I mean, lots of people obviously are aware of you and Sarah's, thermal footage and your property and everything, but I don't think a lot of people know how the whole voyage actually began.
Well, whenever I have talked about it in the past, I always catch myself like going on so many rabbit trails because there's like so much to it. Like it wasn't like I never believed in Bigfoot in the first place, and so that's always been an interest of mine. I've heard people talk about Bigfoot that live in the area, but back in 2012, I was going out to my car one night, heard some strange sounds, just started coming outside every night. I heard a lot of stuff after that, and after sitting out here, started kind of, exploring the area, and a lot of things really unfolded. I've seen a Bigfoot in the daylight. We've taken an audio recorder out here, got a lot of audio recordings of, variables that, we believe are most likely Bigfoot. And after a while, we decided to reach out to some people that we knew that, had access to thermal equipment. Not too long after having it, probably about a month after having it, we got a thermal video of a Bigfoot my brother Joel and I did from about 120 feet away.
And this would be the Grays Harbor thermal video that everybody's familiar with, or should be.
Yeah.
Backing up for just a second, you're on an Indian reservation.
Correct.
In Washington. The area where you're at has a long history of Bigfoot there, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, the property that I live on has been in my family for a few generations, and my grandpa used to have a smokehouse where he smoked fish on this property, and there was times where his smokehouse was raided, and he had commented and saying that there were some really big footprints outside of the smokehouse, like not just big footprints, not like a big Indian's footprints, but much bigger than that. And so there's a long history of it. I'm not the only person on this reservation who has a Bigfoot story. There's a lot of people who are just simply aware of them.
Right. And then some pretty famous track findings, I believe by Cliff Berkman. He found some tracks.
Actually,
or knew about some tracks, or...
Yeah, Cliff didn't find those tracks. I saw a post on Facebook that he was talking about. I don't remember exactly what the last name was on the tracks. I want to think the last name was Green. And from where a crow flies, it's 1 mile away from where we are, and also along the river.
The same river that's just right there at the edge of your property.
Yeah, half mile at the most.
So lots of Bigfoot in the area. What are some of the stories you've heard from others in your area?
Well, when it comes down to like stories, I could probably tell you about like 20 different encounters, and I don't want to take the time to be like, okay, what was the next one? But when it comes down to some of the most convincing to me are, okay, who are the people that are spending a lot of time outside? And those are generally the fishermen who are they got their nets, they got their boats, they're spending night and day out by the river. They probably have some really good stories. And all of the fishermen that I know of that have spent a lot of time on the river have some of the best stories. I mean, some of their interpretations are a little bit different than others, but it's not that they're not explaining something different. They're just
Right.
It's just their personal take on things. One of the guys that doesn't live very far from me, he probably lives about a quarter of a mile away. Ever since he was a boy, he had Bigfoot experiences. He would go down to the river with his grandparents. He would hear them, see them from time to time, and he still sees them. It's not like he sees them every day. He talks about seeing them like every 2 or 3 years. Hears them a lot. He was telling me one time that he didn't even realize until he became an adult that it was all that unique, because after he became an adult, he realized that, he talked to some people who thought it was kind of weird that, he had those experiences.
So how did we get hooked up?
Well, aside from why would you be interested in what we have going on, fill us in on why that is, what you do, and your Bigfoot experiences.
Well, I actually have been interested in Bigfoot and other weird stuff my entire life. And eventually I started focusing more on Bigfoot, reading the books I could find, which were few and far between, and watching documentaries as they came on television and stuff like that. But eventually I got a computer, got on the computer, did a search for Bigfoot. This was back in like 1998.
So you were on AOL?
Yeah, I was on AOL. That's the whole reason I got a computer, was to get AOL. And
Okay.
I was just amazed that there were actually groups of people, that were studying this subject on a regular basis and even going out into the woods looking for them.
So you were doing it when it was like primitive online.
Yeah. There had been people online longer than I had. It had been established, but back then this was, I don't even think, like, before MySpace, long before Facebook. People would have message boards, and they would.
What is that?
It's basically a website that you go to. You log into it. You have like a screen name for it, and people would just post a topic or a question. You'd click on it, and then you could respond to it, and it would post you'd have to write a title for your response and everything, and it would just kind of like post it in an outline form of all these discussions, and you'd just go down and click on each title and read the first post and then the responses to it that followed, and post your own topics and just whatever. And that's pretty much what the Bigfoot community was as far as the internet was concerned. But there were also, like I said, each group would kind of have their own message board. And I eventually got hooked up with a group in Oklahoma. They were based in Oklahoma, but they had members from all over, primarily the southern states, called Monkey Chasers. And it wasn't a real popular name, but that's what we were called. I thought it was kind of funny.
Well, Bigfoot couldn't have been that popular back then.
No, it wasn't. You didn't have all these shows and like all these documentaries and stuff. I mean, you had maybe one or two authors even writing books at the time.
Well, was Dr. Meldrum even in the picture at that point?
Not that I was aware of, no.
Okay.
I've gone back later on in life and looked at some archived message boards and stuff. The GCBRO message board goes back pretty far in its archive, and I've seen people's names posting back then that are still involved in the community now, but they weren't like major figures or anything back then. It was just random people's names. But the main people, you had the BFRO before they were ever on TV or anything. They were probably the largest group, and then you might have had 4 or 5 other groups out there, mostly in different geographic regions. Maybe 1 or 2 conferences a year. I know the Ohio conference was going on, and then there was a Texas conference.
So back then, how big was the Ohio conference?
Well, I never went to it, but it wasn't anywhere near the size it is now. I don't really want to speak on what kind of numbers they had or anything, but I did go to a Texas conference, the second Texas conference, which was held in a town called Jefferson, and there was probably 50 to 100 people there. Really not that many. At any single given time, there might have been 50 people there, and then others would come in and out throughout the period of the weekend. It was held over a weekend. But it wasn't that big of a deal. It hadn't reached mainstream popularity or exposure other than, on April Fool's Day, there'd usually be local news agencies that would put out some Bigfoot story. And then around Halloween, there'd be some Bigfoot stuff. But other than that, there wasn't a lot.
Weren't you telling me that back in those days, when you did go on like a BFRO expedition or something along those lines, that you actually got an email from Matt Moneymaker?
Yeah. Before I joined the Monkey Chasers, I had actually stumbled across the BFRO's website first, because whenever you typed in Bigfoot, it's probably the same way now. The BFRO site comes up first. And so I went there and saw that they did these research outings all over the United States and everything. And they actually had a place on their website where you could fill out an application to join the group. So I did that. And I was actually at a friend's house whenever I filled out the application. And whenever I got home the next day, there was a message on my answering machine from this guy named Matt Moneymaker, and he had gotten my application, and he was interested in having me, join the BFRO if I would just contact him at this number. And he gave the number, and it was a 1-800 number. Well, me being as green as I was at the time, I hear the name Moneymaker first off, and then the guy's pitching me a 1-800 number. And I'm just like, this is some sort of pyramid scheme. Something's going on here, Because on the application, it actually asked, like, what kind of equipment, do you have that could benefit the group? Do you have money that you could donate to the group? If a researcher was in your area, would you be able to provide room and board for them? It had questions.
So Matt Moneymaker was asking you, if it came down to it, do you have like a spare room where he could hang out?
Yeah, in essence. I mean, probably not him, but somebody else in the group. Yeah, it was set up kind of weird. So whenever I got that message, I just thought, this is a scam. And then I got back on the internet and did a little bit of research and figured out that his name really was Matt Moneymaker. And it wasn't a scam, so I emailed him and became a proud member of the BFRO organization. Then,
that'd be really weird to think, like, if you had a sleepover with Matt Moneymaker.
Yeah. That little slumber party with him and Bobo. But
yeah,
at the time, they started posting upcoming outings on their website. And these were directly for BFRO researchers. And I went on there. I had probably been a member, hadn't been contacted by anybody, never got access to any message board, nothing. But Matt Moneymaker had told me I was a member. So I go on there. It's probably a month or so later, maybe more. And up at the top of the page, there's this thing saying there's an upcoming expedition in Oklahoma if any members of the BFRO would like to go on the expedition. So of course, I send a thing like, hey, I'm in Oklahoma, I'd love to go, and I don't hear anything back. And I go through this process a couple of times trying to reach them and hear something back, and finally I get another email from Matt Moneymaker, and he says in the email, he asked me, what equipment do I have that I could take with me, and is there any money that I could donate towards the group for expenses of travel fare and stuff like that. And I told him, I was like, well, no, I don't have any money I could donate. I really don't have very much equipment. I have, at the time I had like a camcorder, a Polaroid camera, a tape recorder, things like that.
And that was sufficient at the time?
Well, apparently not, because I was told that I couldn't go. His response to all of that was basically, well, we've got individuals out here with like $20,000 worth of equipment on them. I mean, like, you really don't have anything that could help us. And I thought it was kind of a raw deal because I thought, in my infinite wisdom, that, well, surely having another set of eyes and ears would be beneficial if you're looking for Bigfoot. And
Right.
I was just really kind of put off by the whole thing, so I emailed him back and told him I was no longer interested in being a part of his organization. And that's whenever I went and joined the Monkey Chasers.
And what happened at the Monkey Chasers?
Well, eventually it led to group politics and arguments and people leaving the group. But before all that stuff happened, I went on quite a number of outings, met some really great people. In 2002, I believe it was, I had my first Bigfoot sighting with the Monkey Chasers during a Monkey Chasers outing here in Oklahoma.
What happened?
At the time, I really don't want to give any locations away, so sorry about that. But at the time, we were in an area known for somewhat consistent activity. We were kind of spread out, and one of the individuals there was using a Gen 3 night vision scope that had been rigged or outfitted to screw on and off the end of a camcorder, and at the time it was just off. And so he was looking through that, and he called me over there, and he wanted me to look through the night vision scope to verify what he was seeing. So I looked through the night vision scope, and about, I want to say 30 yards away.
Man, that's close.
It was fairly close. And through this clearing of trees or whatever, you could see through there, and I saw eye shine, forward-facing eye shine, probably, I would say, right around eye level with me, so maybe 6 feet or so off the ground at the time. And,
Okay.
I'm looking through the night vision. I see the eye glow. I'm letting my eyes focus and everything, and I see a face. There was a tree limb, just a branch, a small branch, partially obscuring it. It's like looking through this hole in the brush, and the branch itself went across the face, probably around the lower jaw area, like right below the mouth or so. 2 large eyes, almond shaped, kind of set far apart. A very heavy brow ridge that was denser, if that makes sense, in the middle than it was on the outside edges. You see a lot of Bigfoot drawings where the brow ridges are heavier over the eyes and then kind of taper in at the middle, and that's not what this looked like. It was just the opposite. It was broader in the middle and over the eyes, and then tapered back around to the sides of the head. No forehead. The hairline came right down to where your eyebrows would be. The hair was kind of growing backwards over the top of its head, which was rounded. It didn't have a sagittal crest, or at least from what I could tell, no. It kind of reminded me of the old Lon Chaney Wolfman movies, the way that the hair grew backwards, and it kind of gave it kind of a not really an afro, but kind of a puffed out look to it.
Yeah.
I didn't see any ears.
What was the nose like?
The nose was smaller in width than what I would have expected. The actual bridge area was set real deep and kind of scooped down, and it was like if you take your finger and put it directly in the middle between your eyes, the nose just kind of dropped straight down from there. And then once it reached the fat area of the nose where your nostrils are and everything, that's when it really flattened and widened out, and the nostrils were really large and wide, and they set kind of more forward facing, where ours like face downward, but not to the extent of like a chimp or a gorilla or anything like that. And the little nub that we have at the end of our nose, it didn't have one of those. It was just nostrils. And then, you know, a kind of a flat area in between.
So what was your...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead about the mouth.
The mouth was really wide, and the lips seemed kind of thin for what I would have expected, once again. And it looked like it had an underbite. Like its bottom jaw kind of like stuck out. It didn't have that monkey face look to it. And then I could see part of, you know, the hair on the side coming down and around it and everything. It didn't have any hair around the eyes, like underneath the eyes. Basically, I'm a hairy guy, so if you just let your facial hair grow without ever shaving, that's pretty much the same pattern this thing had. It had hair, you know, like a thinner mustache area below the lower lip, on the sides of the face, up onto the cheekbones, but not directly under the eyes or the nose.
What was your reaction like when you were seeing everything? Like, were you freaking out, or were you like smooth operator, like, oh, I've seen this 1,000 times?
I can only describe it as shock. Not the kind of shock like you just got into a car accident and you're shaking and wandering around like a weirdo, but I didn't freak out. The freak out happened later. At the time, it was just me staring at it like almost in disbelief of what I was seeing. Like that's kind of the thing. It had enough of an impact on me that I can still see it in my head to this day. I mean, it's definitely imprinted on me. The whole situation was, you know, I'm looking at it for maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It seemed like a lot longer, but I'm sure it wasn't. And I took the scope down and I looked at the other guy and I said, it's the face of something. It is, you know, I'm like stumbling over my words. And he's like, that's what I thought. And I put the scope back up to my eyes and it's gone. There's no more eye shine. You can see the area where the face used to be. I could find the branch that went across in front of its face, but this thing was just gone. It was no longer there. And it was after that that everything pretty much changed. I mean, I didn't really freak out or anything. I kept to myself a lot about it, trying to... The first thing your mind does, or at least for me, was my mind tried to explain it away and rationalize what I had seen. And I'm just like,
So did you...
going through the list and like, no, it wasn't that. Like, it was a face. Like, it just... I kept on trying to argue with myself about it. You know, and there was no argument about it. I mean, it was what it was.
So is that the point where, like, you put the comic books down and you're like, I'm looking into Bigfoot now?
Yeah. Yeah, at that point it became serious. I ended up partnering up with another guy that was not in the Monkey Chasers, but he was affiliated with them. And he lived in the closest town to that area. His name's Chad Scott. We became research partners, one of my best friends. And spent the rest of the majority of my time researching that area, which, you know, over the course of time, I spent 7 years down there.
Man, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Especially researching Bigfoot.
Right. I mean, in the 7 years' time, you know, like, to be fair, I do live 3 hours away from there. So I wasn't down there every day. But I would spend 2 to 3 weeks out of every month down there. And, you know, in the wintertime, if I could get down there, depending on the roads and everything, I would be down there. But the total research time was over the course of about 7 years.
Well, yeah, even over 7 years. I mean, nobody would expect that you were there for 7 years straight. I don't know of any, you know, Bigfooters that are doing anything like that, you know.
Well, that was the thing with Chad. He lived there. The area of research was literally, I mean, on the edge of the town he lived in. I mean, if he left his house, he could get in the middle of the woods within 10, 20 minutes. And so he was out there all the time. So I had the advantage of my partner always being there, you know, and that helped out a lot. But yeah, I spent as much time as I could down there because it was, I knew it was a different situation. It was an ideal situation, just because in that particular area it is inside of a national park, and throughout the year they get a lot of tourism, a lot of campers, and these things have always been there, and they had just gotten used to being around people, not to the point of they would just come out and show themselves, but they seem a lot more bold, or they don't hide as much from you down there. They would like
Did
come
they
out
just
at night
kind of seem a little more entitled?
sort of, you know, kind of like you know, the difference between like a raccoon at a park and a raccoon out in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like that. I mean, at nighttime, they were known to come in and raid the dumpsters and the trash cans and everything. And, you know, in the daytime, they'd go back off into the wilderness and kind of stay back. But every year, still to this day, as far as I know of, there's at least 1 or 2 sightings a year that come from tourists and stuff that are down there. And it's not one of those areas like we have a town called Honubby, where you have the Bigfoot conference every year and the Bigfoot festival. It's not like that. This area doesn't advertise, hey, we've got Bigfoot, come here. You know, so
Right.
there wouldn't be any reason for there to be like ongoing hoaxing or anything like that for tourism purposes.
Especially back then.
Right.
So we're doing this show together, and there's, you know, some really good guests that we've talked about that, you know, we both want to have. You know, we both have our different lists of, you know, people that we would find interesting. Tell us a little bit about that.
There's lots of good shows out there. I've been involved in some shows. I know you've been a guest on a number of shows, and I think we're kind of at the point where we both enjoy the stories and finding out new information. On a lot of the shows, you get a lot of the same guests over and over, or your spotlight guests, you know, like Meldrum or whoever, you know, that everybody has on their shows. And,
like your A-list,
right.
your A-list Bigfoot celebrities.
Right. And over time, I mean, for instance, how the reason I got into contact with you is because I had talked to your wife Sarah and different people that had visited your property and everything, and a lot of the things that were happening there were very similar to some of the things that I'd experienced here in Oklahoma and heard stories about, you know, from different people. Surprisingly enough, a lot of, you know, Native Americans. And those are the kind of stories I like to hear. The ones that, you know, don't get put on Finding Bigfoot or don't make it to the BFRO sighting database. I think some of the greatest researchers, if not the very best in the field, don't go after the limelight and aren't really known. They're known by some, you know, whenever people get to know them or run across them, but they don't seek out the fame and everything of being known and being a known celebrity in the Bigfoot world. So I'd really like to, you know, sit down with some of those people and pick their brains and kind of get them to share some of their stories and their knowledge with everybody.
It's always cool to hear things from, you know, people that, you know, fly under the radar, who you can tell that's not their objective, especially when they're like hesitant, like, I don't really know if I want to do anything like that, you know, because, you know, they're thinking about how they don't, that's not what they're seeking. We're just, you know, simply, they're saying, you have an awesome story, we want to hear it, would you mind sharing it? And, you know, that's not their objective to, you know, get known. We kind of want to hear some of these stories that haven't been told over and over again.
Right. And I have personally been fortunate enough some of the people on my list are what I consider my mentors in this field. You know, kind of put me on the right track, or showed me some things, or shared their knowledge with me that I was able to, you know, kind of use and adapt and take it out into the field and try it for myself, and it produced results. And it has continued to produce results for everybody that goes out with these guys, or, you know, learns the stuff for themselves. I believe the information has led to, I guess you would call it success if you wanted, in my own experiences in this field, with having, you know, a few sightings and some crazy encounters and stuff. And I would just like to get some of that out there, you know, before it's just lost.
Yeah, especially the sightings that are credible. You know,
All right.
People that you personally know that are trusted, and there's no reason to believe that they're, you know, pulling the wool over your eyes.
Right. I mean, a lot of these people are people I consider friends, you know, or really extended family, and it's gotten, our relationships have grown over time, way past the sitting around the campfire swapping stories, you know. It's gone beyond all that, you know. So, you know, these people have helped me out with, you know, personal issues in my life. You know, they've been there for me in times of emergency, in times of, you know, duress. You know, to think that they would sit there and lie.
It got to the point where you were like, you know, wrestling with them in your G.I. Joe underwear and stuff.
No, it didn't. It never crossed that line. I thought we agreed that we wouldn't mention that.
Sorry. Sorry.
But recently, I ran across one of those stories on the YouTube channel you guys have, Bigfoot TV with the Browns. You guys had posted a story about some local tribe people there who had ran across an injured Bigfoot, I believe.
Yeah, that story was recorded from one of my cousins, and it was her dad's brother that was telling the story, and it was a story from his, I can't remember if it was his grandpa or if it was his great grandpa, but it was a ways back.
Right. Yeah, both of them, I think, according to the story, are a remarkable tell. But, you know, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. You need to go over and check out their channel, Bigfoot TV with the Browns. What is that, the actual YouTube name of the channel?
That's what our icon is. It's, if you were to be on YouTube, you would just search Browns Bigfoot.
Browns Bigfoot. Look up the video. Listen to the story. It's awesome. And you guys have like a lot of awesome stuff on that channel that people really need to check out. But it's those kind of stories that I really like. It's just, you hear these stories, and whenever you first hear them, you're like, oh, come on. Yeah, there's no way. That doesn't happen. But over time, you run across other people, you know, that don't know one another, from opposite sides of the universe, and they're telling the same kind of similar stories. And it's just really strange how many people actually know about these creatures or have stories about these creatures, but it's still just a totally unaccepted thing by society and kind of mocked and laughed at.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that is, if you have a Bigfoot story and you know, talk to somebody who's never had a Bigfoot story before, it can be kind of awkward when, you know, somebody that you know, that you've known for a long time, that you're telling this to, when they kind of look at you weird and they're just like, I don't know about that. It's like, all right, I find that offensive that you're saying this to me, because when have I ever lied to you before?
Right.
You know,
like that story we were just talking about, that's a relative of yours. They weren't like going to the Finding Bigfoot town hall meeting and sharing that story. You know, they're just telling a member of their family.
Well, especially when it's coming from somebody who's, you know, sharing that story late in life. If, you know, if they were just, you know, full of crap, they would probably reach the point where they would be more mature than to, you know, leave that as something that they were going to put their name on.
Right. I mean, my great-grandmother told me a story late in life, obviously, and it was kind of funny because whenever she told me this story, I had been Bigfoot researching for a long time at this point, and she thought it was hilarious that I would go out and look for Bigfoot. And anybody that called, whether it was a family member, a friend of the family, a telemarketer, just whoever, my granny did not know a stranger. She was friends with everybody. And she would tell them, do you know what my great-grandson does? But she wasn't doing it to make fun of me. She just thought it was funny. But later on, after all these years and everything, I ended up finding out that I have an uncle who was actually a Bigfoot researcher whenever he was younger. And I never knew that. I grew up not knowing it, never any mention of it. He just brought it up one Thanksgiving whenever he heard that I was a Bigfoot researcher. And he said, well, you know, Granny Carter saw one. Now, my Granny Carter was my great-grandmother's mother, so my great-great-grandmother. And I was like, no, I had no idea. And he was like, yeah, you should ask Grandma about it. So I, you know, asked her about it, and she was like, well, no, she never saw a Bigfoot. And I said, well, you know, Uncle Leo said that she saw one, and it was like raiding the hog pen or something out there at your home in Arkansas or something. Oh, well, yeah, that happened, but that was a booger. In Arkansas, she grew up knowing them as boogers, not Bigfoot, which boogers I know is kind of funny sounding, somewhat offensive to some people, but it's a term commonly used in the South instead of Bigfoot. And whenever I explained to her, like, we're talking about the same thing, it's just a different name, that changed her perspective of everything. My great-great-grandmother, you know, on their homestead or whatever, raised all kinds of animals for survival. They had, you know, a small group of hogs in a pen. There was a noise out there one night. Her and her husband went out there to investigate. We're talking about, you know, early 1900s, so they're out there with like a lantern. And as they walked out towards the pig pen, this big hairy thing had a hog, like a 300-pound hog, under one of its arms, like just one arm wrapped around it. Its back was to them, and it just walked off into the woods carrying this hog like it was no big deal. You know, like, to me, I'm just sitting there.
Oh, it's boogers you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, yeah, of course there's boogers. You talking about those big, hairy, wild mountain men? Yeah, that's what I've been talking about for the past 12 years now.
Oh, I guess you're not crazy, Matt.
Yeah, it was one of those moments. But
That's funny.
You've got a lot of people like that. You've got a lot of Native American people, a lot of rural people, a lot of people from the South who, out here at least, you know, weren't in the Pacific Northwest. You know, they didn't know what a Bigfoot was. They didn't know what a Sasquatch was. But they were still experiencing them. They were just called something entirely different.
And you have these stories prior to the internet and people texting about it, you know?
Here in Oklahoma, you've got stories reaching back before statehood, you know, the 1800s, whenever it was still Indian territory. There's newspaper clippings from the early 1900s. You know, the stories go back, you know, as far as you can dig.
Yeah, that's the things those are the points that are really cool, where it's like, you know, why would these stories even exist if, you know, there wasn't something behind it?
Right. The stories existed prior to the media getting a hold of them. prior to, Rick Dyer shooting one, Matt Moneymaker being on TV, Melba Ketchum uncovering their DNA, and Todd Standing.
Wait. You better not put Butchie Kid in the same category with these guys.
You know what? I don't. I like Butchie Kid. I think his videos are great. He is hilarious at times. I don't consider him a hoaxer. He does parody of Bigfoot. I think it's funny. Don't got a problem with Butchie Kid.
So, who do we have lined up next?
Well, right out the gate, for our next guest, I can't confirm it quite yet, but we're going to be starting off with a 1-2 punch. A couple of very close extended family members of mine, known as Kumbo and Bear to the internet, Tim Baker and Jim Grant, a lot of other, as they're known, Bigfoot outlaws, my extended family, several other people nobody's ever heard of, and yeah, we're looking forward to rocking and rolling, getting it out there.
I think it's going to be fun. We're going to hear a lot of good stories.
I hope everybody enjoys them. I hope you've enjoyed our little introduction show that we threw together today, last minute. Thanks, John.
You're welcome, Matt.
And try to get a set of headphones that aren't Rainbow Dash glittery.
I'm going to have some gangster headphones next time.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to Bigfoot Crossroads Radio.